Hi everybody, Cohh Carnage here with a quick tips video on Elden Ring, and these are some of the best tips that you might know, but you may not know. These are tips that are not generally ones that you're going to find in like the My First guides on all the different sites. These are going to be tips that maybe you've played Elden Ring a little bit and are just cool things to know. So without further delay, let's get right to it. There's going to be a lot of times in this game where you're doing platform jumping, or you're trying to utilize gravity to not die by it. Those platforming sessions a lot of times happen outside, in which case you may want to use your horse, as the jump is a lot longer and can also double jump. Lots of good reasons to use it. First of all, as many of you know, if you're moving in any direction and you fire up your horse, he is going to fire in that direction. Now, if you're on a ledge, you're just going to fire right off it. So the first tip is always make sure you are completely still before you tap the left tab to get off. You are going to get off on a side. It's not always the same side. So if you're on a ledge, make sure you position yourself so no matter what side you get off, you're not going to fall off the ledge. But keep in mind also getting on is the same way. If you're moving and you get on your horse, then you're going to kind of fire forward. But if you are still when you get on your horse, it is not going to fire forward. And that is, again, when you're platforming, incredibly important. God damn it! The one time I needed that freaking horse to go forward! Ah! Another great tip for riding on the horse is whenever you move on the horse in any direction, just like a real horse, he doesn't just spin like a tank turret on top of a tank. He actually moves. So the problem with that is that with just the tiniest wrong input, your horse will take you right off a ledge, especially if you're trying to turn around or something. A very cool trick to get around this is to use a bow or a telescope, and while looking through that, rotate. Now, if you look down, watch the horse. There's no more animation. This means that you are moving in a circle and your character is planted on the ground. So if you are needing to turn in a very close area and you are, like me, most times very concerned about falling off, pop on a telescope or bow and then use that to position yourself. Once you're ready, just fire it off and you're good to go. A great tip for ways to work with items in dungeons is the shackles. There are two different shackles that you can get in the game, one for Margit and one for Mohg. They look like this right here. Now, these are items you can use whenever you want, and they're specifically designed for the boss fights against these two people. However, here's a little interesting fact about this. The way these items work is they do a large radius pulse of a 0 damage attack with an effect. Now, on these two enemies, that effect brings them down. On most enemies, it does nothing, it does 0 damage, so nothing happens. However, if you are in a dungeon or any area with secret walls or items that are usable if you, say, roll into them, like the giant flame columns that go up and down, when you use one of these shackles, like this, every single secret wall around you gets taken down and any flame turrets get lowered into the ground. It's an incredibly cool trick. So every time you use either Margit or Mohg shackle, every hidden door in a radius around you gets exposed. Pretty cool trick, and a great way to make sure you're getting everywhere in the areas you're exploring. A great tip that you can do to get to the Roundtable hold quickly is actually a button combination. So not a lot of people know. Now, most of the time when you walk around or warp around the map, you zoom out to move quicker and then zoom in to go wherever you like to go. One thing that not a lot of people know is the Y button goes to Sites of Grace, and then if you go to the far left, it actually goes to the only selection of Roundtable hold. Now, what that means is there's a very easy, quick button combination that no matter where you are on the map will quickly take you to Roundtable hold. So what that means is back YXA. And you can do that from wherever. You never need to move anything, and you just go right there. So anytime you're out in the wild and you're just like, oh, I need to go to Roundtable hold, YXA. Bam, done. And if you're on mouse and keyboard, you can just look for those buttons on yours too. Sometimes in the heat of battle, you may be using a lot of items or a lot of spells, and you just got that big hit on you and you need to get to that big healing spell or that big pot quickly. The best way to do that is for your spells, you can hold the up button on the D-pad. That will automatically take your spell to the first spell in your list. Now, if you make that a healing spell, that means that if you hold up, you will always go directly to your healing spell or damage or whatever you put there. Now, the same thing works for your items. So most of the time, your Estus Flask is in your first slot. If you hold down, it always goes to that slot. So no matter where you are in your long item menu, if you hold down, it will always go back to your healing. And that way you can get that pot off when you need it in the boss fight. This is a very cool trick that will let you know exactly if you can do a drop without dying. There are items in the game called rainbow stones. Now, a lot of times people think that these stones are specifically used to mark where you are in dungeons. You can do that, but that's not the best use for them. What you can do with a rainbow stone is you can throw it like this over a ledge. If the stone is lit, then you can not only make the jump for sure, but if you roll from where you are, 9 times out of 10, you'll land pretty much right in front of that stone, depending on how far it went. So that is a really cool trick. Now, the big thing about this trick is if you throw that stone and it breaks when it hits the ground, that means that fall is too long for your character, and no matter what you do, you will die. This is a tip that will save you many, many times if you learn to do it properly. So the thing that you can do, which is interesting, is that you can charge up a jump while standing still to be a sprinting jump with almost no movement. And let me show you what I mean after these wolves. So right here, if we look at this line, I'm going to stand on that brick. If I jump forward, that's what we're looking at, right? So sometimes you can get like a tiny running start, but most of the time your jumps are going to look like that. If you have no area to run, that's what your jumps are going to look like. You just hit A and hold forward, that's what you're looking at. If you get a little bit of a running start, you're looking at that, which is a little better, but neither of those are a sprint jump. If you jump into the air and hold B, and then after you land on the ground, push forward to tell your character to start running and then immediately jump, you will do a sprint jump from a near standing position. See how much further that jump was than the others? And you see how I almost had to move no distance to do it? That is a sprint jump. And that will save you so many deaths when you learn to do that properly in areas that need just that little bit of extra distance to get through. Sometimes when you play Dark Souls, you just don't want to die. Maybe you're doing a challenge run. Maybe you got a whole bunch of souls you don't want to leave in the boss room. There's all sorts of reasons. But maybe there's times when you just don't want to die. You want an easy out. Well, for those times, you can do this. That works in a boss fight. That works on ledges. That works anywhere. That is an item you get to get transferred to the Moog area from a quest guy called Vare early in the game. And when you get this item, which is this item right here, you can pop this item as a quick usable, which is this right here. If you hit your items, the pouch over here, I just put it on my left. And now anytime I want, during a boss fight, anything, all I have to do is hold Y, hit left, and then do that, and I'm out. I'm gone. I'm safe. So if you are planning on doing a run, like a permadeath run or a very low death run, an item like this is super, super helpful and something you may want to get early. A very little known tip, but it can be really helpful for soul farming or just something to keep on the lookout for while you're playing. If you ever notice an enemy with golden eyes, that enemy is worth 5x the runes. This is not a big deal, but it can be if you're running around the world and you happen to notice an enemy that's worth a lot of souls that has golden eyes, maybe a good idea to take a few seconds to go kill it because, well, 5x souls can be really meaningful in the larger enemies. Another very cool trick in this game that can be very helpful is if you have the extra weight, there's some excellent buffs that can be used as weapon arts and ashes that you can put on alternate weapons that will then buff your main weapons. So a good example is getting a very low weight dagger and putting the Golden Vow ability on it. What that means is that early game, you can switch real quick to your dagger. You can use the buff on it to apply the buff to yourself, and then you can just go right back to your main weapon. So there's more than a few ashes that do fun things like this. And there are spells later in the game that kind of can take the place of some of these, but early game especially, that stuff is super useful and can give you a real leg up. Another little lesser known fact is the messages and multiplayer groups. One thing we do, and you can do with your friends, is if you go into multiplayer, you can set a message in here. And if everyone in your friend group or community that you're a part of uses the same message, then what happens is their messages show up in a special way in the game. So this message right here was left by somebody that put Gary Coon in their game. I know that somebody, whoever left this, Time for Wrath, that's a person who was probably watching my stream because we made this message during the screen. Now, what's also really, really cool about this is, and for the record, you don't need to be in the same friend group for this. Anytime you appraise a message, if that person is playing the game, it heals them. I appraise all messages in my group, Gary Coon. A few days ago, I was doing the same thing, going around and appraising, and a few minutes later, somebody dropped in my chat and was like, Cohh, thank you so much. And I said, why? And he goes, I was fighting a boss fight. I'd used my last pot. I was on 1 hit left, and you just healed me, and I beat him. Thanks. And I went,
Nani?
And that's when I learned that appraising messages can heal people. So that was pretty cool. Another really cool trick, one that I have not really had the chance to utilize this playthrough, but we may do a lot in the DLC, is the fact that the Frost Stomp Ash finds hidden paths. And what I mean by that is there are definitely times in this game where you are walking over nothing, where the game does some fun things with space and hidden things and things of that nature. If you have the Ash Frost Stomp on a weapon, you can use that in front of you and it will show you where everything is so you can easily get around it. This tip is for mid to late game when you have a whole bunch of souls in your inventory and you just don't want to have to go through and use them. What most people do in this situation is they open their inventory, they click the item, they use the selected number, they select the max, and they do that for, you know, the 15 different groups of souls they have in their inventories. Now, that would be cool if you didn't have to open your inventory every single time, find the item again, and do all that, right? That sucks. However, if when you're on this screen, you tap R3, then when you use items from the inventory, it doesn't close the inventory. So what that means is when you have like 3 rows of these, you can just X, use maximum, enter. X, use maximum, enter. X, use maximum, enter. And there's no continually having to go into your inventory every single time. Now that works for a lot of other item types too, especially if you're doing all at once. The other very easy thing to do with this also is keep in mind that the runes, the one that we just used as an example, those can just be sold to vendors. So if you're out in the field and for some reason you want to use a bunch of runes without teleporting, this is a great tip to do. But if you're at the Roundtable holder can teleport, just sell them to a vendor. They sell for the exact same rate as you would get by using them, and you can bypass all those animations. So one thing I learned in our most recent playthrough that I didn't know my previous ones is there are times when you're going to need to get through lava and other nastiness. Now, a lot of times you're going to want to avoid rolling, especially in Poison and Rot, as that's going to do things that stay on you permanently. But unlike Poison and Rot, lava slows you down significantly. You can't sprint. This is sprinting in lava. However, there's a way to get across lava and other things like this much better, and that is go backwards. Pretty cool. So that speeds things up significantly and also makes it so you can get around much, much quicker. Now, on top of that, also moves like the Bloodhound attack and the Quick Step Ash do go through this. So if you do want to get through quicker, just turn your ass around, put your butt forward, and start doing a little kind of weird twerky thing. Works out great. Anyway, hope that helps your playthrough. One thing that I love about Elden Ring is there are so many hidden little Easter eggs that you can just randomly find by trying different things. One of them, which is really fun, is the fact that if you equip a very certain type of dart, it is called a crystal dart. These darts actually drive the types of enemies that are kind of golem. So like the little gargoyles, the big cat bosses, it drives them absolutely crazy. And that is awesome because if you have multiple, they'll actually start attacking each other and stuff too. So pretty cool. And hopefully in your playthrough, you can utilize those to make some fights easier. Anyway, I hope by watching this video that you found some tips that might help you in your playthrough. We're going to be doing a full big run of the Elden Ring DLC. I'm very excited. We're going to be doing a 100% go everywhere, kill all bosses, and hopefully finding some fun new tips for you. So anyway, if you enjoyed this, would love if you sub to the channel. This is our new YouTube channel with new highlights and stuff on it. Let us know what you think, and appreciate you watching. See you on Twitch. Bye-bye.